Hey guys, welcome into the Bear With Us podcast. I'm Jack. He's Frank. No Nas this week. He was too scared to talk about what we're about to talk about today. Although I think it would have been fun because he had a quarterback way up high that I would have liked to have debated with him. Maybe called him an idiot. We'll see. Maybe. Maybe we'll do that another time. But no, we're going to be discussing, as we do on an annual basis at some point in the offseason, our 2024 quarterback power rankings. All the quarterbacks seem to have landed on their feet. We have, guys, and not any crazy offseason moves, really, other than obviously Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta, really, I feel like is the biggest one. Maybe Justin Fields to Pittsburgh, but I don't know if I'd call that big. But Frankie, let's do what we always do. Let's rank them, and we'll talk about the tier list. We'll talk about who we think is below Caleb Williams at number 1 for both of us right here and now. So first, let's start. We're gonna start at the bottom and work our way to the top. So 26 through 32. Frankie, I'm just gonna give you mine real quick, and we'll kind of see where we're at there. 26. I have Carolina starter Bryce Young. I don't know, man. Like I just don't know if that whole thing is going to work. I do think that they invested a good amount in their offensive line. Got some interesting weapons, I guess. So maybe he can break through, but I think 26 is more than fair based off of what we saw. Then I have Russell Wilson at 27, Geno Smith at 28, Daniel Jones 29, Sammy Darnold or Viking starter, whoever you want, at number 30. 31, I have Bo Nix. And then 32, everybody's favorite Gene Short wearing man, lives in an RV, and everybody loves him for some reason, Gardner Minshew at number 32 for the Vegas Raiders.
Well, you have Russ low as shit. My goodness. I thought I was sort of doing him a disservice where I had him, but I do not have him there. Our list is going to be pretty different, which I like. 26 through 32 isn't too much of a notation for me. You're either a rookie, and I wasn't maybe the hugest fan of you coming out, which you can always change my mind about, or I just think you're trash. So 26 to me was Drake May. 27, Jaden Daniels, which again, not trash by any means. I think they could be really good in this league. 28 is Will Levis. His situation was more like, I could see this being his last year or him having a Jay Cutler type career. Daniel Jones was the trash category for me. I had Minshew / O'Connell, Raiders starter at 30, 31, Bo Nix, 32, J.J. McCarthy. I will say, if I thought Sam Darnold can win that spot, which I guess, I don't even know why I'm saying that, because if I think it's a debate, they probably deserve to be 32, because I'm very low on J.J. McCarthy anyway. But I was going to say, maybe Sammy Darnold would be a tad bit higher, but I do think that's J.J.'s spot, if not week 1, by like week 3 or 4. So, nothing too heavy. I think the guy that I look at the most that I think could jump out of there rather quickly could be Will Levis, just given all the physical tools that he has. Year 2, granted, new head coach, but I think he's the most physically talented of everyone on my list from 26 to 32.
I think in my bottom tier, I think the one that intrigues me the most. And I know Bryce Young is in there, but I got to be honest, I'm just not the biggest fan of how his game will translate to the NFL. So I know that's a name to look out for. I guess you could say Russell. I'm going to answer kind of or respond to your, just astonishment of why I had Russ so low. And I'm not saying Russ played bad last year. I don't know. Like, I don't know if he really fits Pittsburgh's culture. Like, he feels like a guy who's going to try to be something that he's not. And I just don't know how that's going to gel with sort of where that team is at. But I also just expect him to be supplanted by Justin Fields at some point, who I would rank higher than Russell Wilson if I was doing. And I guess I probably should have clarified that when we originally started this episode. We're doing it, at least I was doing it under the impression of listing the presumed starters at this point on May 28th. Things can change, injuries can happen. These might not be the starters, but if I were just doing based off of things I've heard, which is why I had Sam Darnold listed as the starter. Because if it was JJ McCarthy, I'd actually have Bo Nix moved up a slot because I had Bo Nix higher than JJ McCarthy. But back to my original point, I think the one that interests me the most, I think actually is Bo Nix because of just the transcendence he had when he went to Oregon and just like the completely different quarterback that he became, getting drafted by the coach that he was drafted by. Sean Payton obviously very much likes him and wants to see this work. So Nas and I have talked about this a couple times with Sean Payton. Is he as good as everybody thinks? I think he's a little bit overrated. But that being said, he was able to make it work with Drew Brees. And I'm not saying Bo Nix is obviously Drew Brees, but could I see Bo Nix having a very solid career? I think it's more than possible, especially again with the coach that he was drafted to. And, But is he going to be the player we saw at Auburn? Is he going to be the player we saw at Oregon? Is anything that he did in Oregon, is that going to be translatable to the NFL? I genuinely don't know. So that's why I had him ranked a little bit lower. But I would say out of that group, I would be the most curious to kind of follow his career this year.
Yeah, no, for sure. He's another interesting guy on the list for me as well. I will say some of that experience certainly has to transfer over. First touchdown pass was to Jerry Rice. Last touchdown pass was to Rome Odunze. Like, this guy's been in college for 40 years. He's got something. Right.
He's got something. We just don't know what it is. Frankie, real quick before we move on, Danny Dimes, because obviously he was low on both of our lists here.
Yep.
Is there any possibility that he, that he will be able to take a step or anything?
I mean, it depends on. I guess it depends on what you mean by a step. You think about the year that got him extended, they got him that contract. Like, he did marginally better for Daniel Jones. Like, comparing it against him, when you compare it against the rest of the league, it was still a pretty subpar year. And realistically, like, all they did was unlock his legs a little bit more. It's not like he's such an inconsistent passer, dude. Like, I don't get how the league hasn't talked about him the way they talk about Justin Fields. It's quite interesting that has not been a similar talking point, because he cannot throw the football. Like, he's super inconsistent. As a matter of fact, forget like inconsistencies, even just the raw throwing ability. It's like it's not like he has a Will Levis arm. It's not like he has the Justin Fields deep ball. Like, there's not some component for you to be like, man, maybe if you can just put this together combined with the legs. I don't see it. No. And he's going to get that. He's going to get that whole regime fired, I think, especially if ownership likes him and they want to stick with him. I can't imagine him being a starter beyond this year.
Do you think Brian Daboll will have any chance? Like, could you see them maybe switching quarterbacks?
Who is their backup?
That's a great question.
Is it Tyrod Taylor go back there? I'm blanking on who the backup is. I was just looking at the depth charts and everything, but that's going to be a big part of it as well.
Right.
This isn't like an Aiden O'Connell Raiders thing where it's like, all right, maybe we're going to stick with you at first, but Gardner Minshew is more than capable of starting some games in this league, so we can hand him off. I don't know if the Giants are set up that way.
Right. Yeah, I'm curious to see how having an actual wide receiver will maybe potentially help Daniel Jones, because Neighbors is by far Drew Lock.
No.
Yikes.
I mean, I guess, but yeah, it's.
You know what Drew Lock kind of feels like, them getting Drew Lock? It kind of feels like Daboll is like, he's going to do that. He's going to try and do that thing that coaches do where like they just take a quarterback that like had high potential or like a high potential ceiling, whatever. And then, just didn't work out. And he's going to try and be like, oh, this is actually my guy. Like, let me work with this quarter. You know what I'm saying? Like a Matt Nagy, Andy Dalton type thing. To save himself from Daniel Jones, even though they did give him that extension. But I mean, Neighbors is by far, the best receiver Daniel Jones has had, in at least the last 3 seasons. So curious to see how that maybe impacts his ability to sort of outperform expectations. 20 through 25, Frankie. 20, a little bit higher than where you had him, but I had Will Levis at 20.
Oof,
21,
shit.
I had Drake May. 22, Jaden Daniels. 23, Deshaun Watson. 24, Baker Mayfield. And 25, Derek Carr. Now, I could easily see Deshaun Watson outplaying the 23 ranking, but like the injuries, what we've seen recently, it hasn't been good. It has not been a good situation for him in Cleveland. I'm more intrigued by the younger guys that I just mentioned. Obviously, Derek Carr, kind of is what he is at this point, right? Like,
yep.
He kind of fits what the Saints are doing perfectly. He's just there. They just kind of existed.
Yeah.
And Baker, I'm not falling for the Baker stuff. Come on.
I may have fell for him a little bit. Okay, my 20 through 25. 20 is Kyler Murray. 21 is Russell Wilson. 22, Geno Smith. 23, Anthony Richardson. 24, Derek Carr. 25, Bryce Young. I guess sticking to the point of like the guy who intrigues me the most, the guy who I can see totally outplaying their spot is Anthony Richardson. He's, I think, hands down the most physically talented person in this group. And I guess with that, a guy that I can continue to see to slide on my rankings would be Russell Wilson. It's an age thing with him. We saw him in his prime in Seattle, and even towards the end before he got traded to Denver. What he relied on was just pure physical scrambling ability, and he just doesn't have that anymore. Like, he's not a guy that's going to sit in the pocket and dice you up, and that's why Sean Payton wasn't the biggest fan of him. He holds the ball while he likes to, manipulate pockets, and in his prime, he was phenomenal at it, but he's not that good anymore. But it wouldn't shock me if by the end of the year, we're looking at Anthony Richardson saying, like, this guy's probably a top 15 dude. He's so talented. It's going to be about durability with him, and really the situation itself, which I think we both agree is really, really good. I mean, they made the playoffs without him last year. He already played 6 games, and Gardner Minshew stepped in, and that roster they have there is very, very good. Coaching staff, very, very good. So he's only there really because he got hurt. I think if he puts together a full season last year, he's probably higher on the list.
Yeah, I have him. I have him just a little bit higher than that. But we'll get to that in a second here. All right. 15. Well, I guess 15 through 19. I already blew up. I blew it, Frank. I already blew the the system that we had working here.
It's all good.
So 15 is I have Kirk Cousins at 15. 16 I have Jordan Love. 17 I have Brock Purdy. 18 I have Kyler Murray. And then 19 I have Aaron Rodgers. And I know that Aaron Rodgers one will probably upset a few people here or there. I don't know how you can trust 40-plus-year-old man coming off of an Achilles surgery that can I just say something real quick, Frank? It was very weird, was it not, how he just sort of like they were doing that dance real quick about, or like last year they were doing that dance about how, like, he's gonna come back, he's coming back, look at him, he's pushing off the leg, and like pregame, all that pregame stuff, and then nothing happened and nobody said anything afterwards. They were just like, oh yeah, it just kind of whatever, he'll be back next year. It was weird.
It was very weird. It also, I think if you gave him some truth serum, I think I'm being dead ass serious here too. I think his biggest play, or what his angle was with that, was if I can get back early with experimental science and run as vice president under RFK, that would have been his whole thing. Yeah, we can't trust. I mean, his whole angle has been not trusting vaccines and blah blah blah, and like natural healing and all. Like, if he would have been able to play even a quarter last year, he would have went through with that 100%, and that would have been his platform of misinformation.
Yeah, I think God, if he gave that guy truth serum, who knows what would come out of his mouth, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, some of his former teammates have come out and saying like he just wanted to talk to them about like 9/11 conspiracies, and what was the other big thing? Like, he's just strange. I mean, he's just in the YouTube rabbit hole is all, and he thinks he's smarter than what he really is.
Right, exactly.
I did have him higher though. Than
okay.
you. We vastly disagree on Brock Purdy. When we were texted, I thought we were on the same page there, and we are not at all.
I was kidding. I was joking. You weren't kidding?
No, I wasn't kidding at all.
Oh wow.
No.
Okay. So here's the thing with Brock. I really, really do like Brock. I feel like we haven't seen him. Like, I feel like we haven't seen enough of him doing things on his own. And what I mean, granted, you can only work in the system that you have, obviously. I just don't know if Brock is a quarterback that is going to be able to get the 49ers over that hill. Like, in a matchup between him and Pat Mahomes, I'm taking Pat Mahomes 9 times out of 10. Like, there's going to be very, very rare moments that is going to really be able to work and really going to be able to push them over the top. So it's not so much that I like things that Brock does. I just think I need to see a little bit more. And it's kind of why I was hoping Debo or Ayuk would get traded to maybe kind of take some of the excuses away, I guess. That's not really the right word, but he just has a lot working for him as opposed to against him in the team that he's currently on. He also has a very good offensive line and probably the best running back in football.
Yeah, well, and that was sort of the tug of war that I had, but then I had to realistically just assess, like, this may be his situation for the majority of his career. Like, Kyle Shanahan loves him, so as long as he's there, that's going to be the starting quarterback. He's going to get paid, so weapons will have to look a little bit different, and maybe that's when I reassess and say, is he making these guys better, or was he a product of Debo and Ayuk and Kittle and McCaffrey and obviously the best play caller in football? I'm just not there yet. And from what he has done to me is what propelled him, into the position that I have him. But quickly for me, what are you doing? 15 through 19. 15, I'm lockstep with you, Kirk Cousins. 16 is Trevor Lawrence. 17 is Deshaun Watson. 18 is Caleb Williams. 19 is Baker Mayfield. The two, I mean, that whole, again, we were texting, like, for me, if you were just to shuffle, like, 8 through, I don't know, 20, like, I don't know. This was tough. Here's where the list got very, very hard for me because the guy I can see totally sliding out, and he's obviously slid further for you, is Deshaun Watson. This is almost like a last chance ranking. I still faintly remember what you did in Houston. And if you can't recapture that, you're going to be like low 20s. Obviously, Caleb has the ability to play himself out of this. Trevor Lawrence, I mean, and the reason he's there is because he's my highest graded rookie. Who can I, like, put him above that wouldn't be crazy? And I thought these were the names. Trevor Lawrence, same exact thing. Like, he could be top 10 by the end of the year. The guy though that is most intriguing to me, Kirk Cousins. I mean, coming off an Achilles, going into on a new team in a new system with brand new weapons, he could be a guy that we're looking at the end of the year like, holy shit! Like, the team, the red pill contract finally bit someone in the ass, like, big time, because there's a real possibility in which he's just cooked. But you look at his track record and things, and he's always been a very good regular season quarterback. So it was tough for me to put him any lower than that. But 15 through 20 is probably the most, like, malleable for me, I guess.
You could honestly put any of these guys anywhere, and I'd be like, yeah, I can understand that.
Right.
Honestly, I guess I didn't realize the state of NFL quarterbacking, because I feel like there's obviously more than 32 guys that could be ranked, especially based off of what we saw last year with the amount of quarterbacks that actually ended up playing. I mean, hopefully a lot of these guys stay healthy so we can get a better, because I feel like a lot of these guys, I was going through the list, I'm just like, well, like, do I know what they're going to look like? Like Aaron Rodgers or Kyler even. Like, yeah, he came back last year, but he didn't really have a chance to do a whole lot. So it's a very interesting list, I think. And I could see maybe Jordan Love being a little bit higher at some point. I don't know. Like, because I know a lot of people will say, because of where I have CJ Stroud, I know a lot of people will say, well, why not Jordan Love? There's just, I don't know, man. I can't explain it. And it's, I hope it doesn't come across as just being a Packers hater, which absolutely I 100% am someone who hates the fucking Packers. But there's just, I don't know. Like, I watch Jordan Love and I just don't see the stats translate. Like, I feel like it's one of those things where, like, numbers maybe do lie. And maybe I'm just fooling myself a little bit. But I don't know. I just don't see it.
Yeah.
I don't see it with Jordan Love. Now, granted, he does it this year. Maybe maybe that changes. Maybe if he does it again. But I do think that there is something to NFL defenses getting a chance to watch tape from last year and let's see what they adjust to and see if he's able to adjust back. That's kind of where I'm at with him right now.
Let's do reel off your 10 through 14 and I'll rebuttal Jordan Love because he's in there for me.
Let's do 11 through 14.
11 through, okay.
We'll save the top 10. Yeah. All right, so 11 I have Tua, 12 I have Stafford, 13 I have Trevor Lawrence, 14 I have Anthony Richardson.
Oh, you really did have Anthony Richardson at 14? Holy shit.
Yeah. Yep.
I was not expecting that. Okay.
Too high or too low?
Too high for me. I just not a big enough sample size. He certainly has the talent to be there. I just couldn't justifiably put him over some guys that we've just seen do it year in and year out.
I think for me, so just full disclosure, for me it's a ceiling thing. Like I look at the guys that are kind of grouped close by him in that pool. Kirk Cousins, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Kyler Murray, Aaron Rodgers, Will Levis, Drake May, like going from 14 on down, to me, I see Anthony Richardson as having the highest ceiling of those guys in that group. And to me, that is almost enough to put him ahead. Again, he's going to have to stay healthy. He will have to perform, of course. But I just, from when he was playing, like, you could see it. Like I was just talking about with Jordan Love, you can see it with Anthony Richardson. Like, you can see, oh, if this dude figures it out, this could be a problem.
Yeah, I guess I would have rather have seen a full season of him having some ups and downs versus just 6 games and then being injured. Because that's the question that triggers for me is, can his body sustain this? I know he's a huge dude. Like, if you just saw him, with pads on, you may think he's like a defensive end. He's fucking ginormous, but that doesn't always mean you're going to be durable for the NFL, and that's what sort of scares me. But I agree with the ceiling. I totally agree. I mean, physically speaking, he, and honestly, just like his ability to read defenses and the quick decisions he was making, same thing with CJ Stroud. Like, I thought both of them were pretty advanced for rookies. Like, because you never know what to expect with rookies. We know how physically talented some of these guys are, but that's the portion where you're like, that may take a couple years. That may never come at all. We saw it with Justin. That sort of never really clicked with him, even though he was so physically talented. So I get it. It was tough for me. Again, this is more of like a tug of war of thoughts of like, you're right. If we're just talking ceiling, Anthony Richardson may be like top 10 on my list, just pure ceiling. But I had to weigh the other factors that were there. So for me, 11 was Matt Stafford, 12 was Jared Goff, 13 is Dak Prescott, and then 14 was Jordan Love. And here's where I'd like to sort of take the baton and talk about Jordan Love. For me, just like you said, what am I trying to say here? I have so many thoughts. It was a tale of 2 seasons for him. In the beginning of the year, he looked really bad. And it was almost like a joke of like, you guys let this guy sit 4 years. You got rid of Aaron Rodgers for this. But then something seemed to click, and it seemed like things started to mesh well, and he ended the year on the total opposite. I mean, what did he go on? Like a 20-1 touchdown to interception ratio? Yeah. Obviously, he's not going to be able to keep that up. That's impossible. But I lean more towards him being that sort of competent quarterback that was able to spread the ball around. Because I think that's why the Packers' offense looked better under him in the second half of the year than it had the last couple of years with Aaron Rodgers, because he wasn't zoned in on one guy. His ability to be able to spread the ball to Wicks and Watson and just everyone else in between was really good. And we saw Rodgers sort of hone in on Devontae Adams for years towards the end. But he is a guy that I can see him. We sort of joked off stream of you saying like, or off podcast of you saying like, man, like Anthony Richardson or Will Levis is either going to be good or bad. And it's like, I almost feel that way about Jordan Love because of what we saw last year. We saw really good and we saw really bad, and there wasn't much in between. So to your point of like, defenses have tape on him now, they're really going to hone in on his weaknesses. We're going to see, is Jordan Love really the guy closer to that second half of the season? Or was he closer to, when he was confused and sort of looked like a deer in headlights outside of the Bears game in week 1 in that first half of the season? So I lean more towards him being competent. I really liked what I saw. Because here's the thing. I should have said this too, is going into the year, let's not let Packers fans fool you. They were nervous too. Like everyone thought the guy stunk. Like we saw practice clips of this dude looking like just an absolute bum. But I don't hold that bias against people, but my preconceived notion of you going into the year can completely change, and it has. Because if I looked at, I probably had him at like 28 last year, and he jumped up. If that was the case, he jumped up 14 spots. He's at 14 for me, and I think he has a chance. Because you look at some of the guys above him. Do I look at like Jared Goff is like incredibly higher than him? No. Do we look at Dak Prescott incredibly? Yeah. No. I mean, even not even cracking a top 10, this guy could end the year at like 11 or 12, and no one would bat an eye. I do think he's very physically talented.
Let me ask you a question. When you were doing these quarterback rankings, and I know obviously the answer to my question because I'm the one asking it. Did you by any chance take the situations into account? Offenses, wide receivers, offensive line, coaching. Did any of that play anything into it, or were you looking purely at it from a quarterback? What skill set do they have? Previous performance. Things like that. Like
it was more about quarterback, which is why we talked about Brock Purdy. That's why that one was the toughest to me, because I agree with you. We haven't seen him do, the things that like Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes have. But then I sort of had to look in the mirror because I don't know if Bryce Young looks like that in that same offense. Like there are guys that you just can't plug in and just say, oh, because he's with Kyle Shanahan, they would probably be at least marginally better. The argument
with Brady for so long.
Yeah, no.
Like Brady was a system quarterback, but he played the system perfectly, and then he became
he superseded it, right? No, 100%. So I think situation was much less for me, and it was more about physical talent, sort of the last few years in combination, what I've seen from them, what I think of them. I honestly didn't look at like raw stats because that's like silly to me to.
Oh man, you're lucky Nas is in here to hear you say that,
or
else he'd be knocking down your fucking door.
I honestly, I think he would agree with me though. I think total passing. I mean, because he had Matt Stafford at 5, and he only had like 3,800 yards last year. Like, and that's no disrespect that Matt Stafford's still phenomenal, but he's still looking. I think me and him, and probably you two would agree, are looking at. I'm not looking at the back end of PFF or anything, but how do they handle pressure, or do they manipulate the pocket well enough? Is there, can they call out blitzes? Can they read defenses? That's really the most important. So can they throw the ball on time? Things like that. And these dudes who have consistently done it for years immediately shoot up in terms of tiers for me.
Yeah. Okay. I was just curious because, I wouldn't say that anybody's situation really impacted mine too much, obviously,
Same.
other than Brock Purdy maybe even knocking him down a little bit. But
right.
I think Jordan Love, to your point, I think he's someone that maybe benefits a little bit from not having a true number one wide receiver currently. There hasn't been an established one. The way they spread the ball around, it's funny because that's almost what Aaron Rodgers would have loved to have done. I think if Aaron Rodgers had this Packers offense, like he would be thrilled. But
yeah,
I think he would also take having Davante Adams as well. I just think the core that they built, it gives Jordan Love a lot of options. I'm just curious to see what happens if some of those guys don't take a step alongside him. All right, so let's do 6 through 10, and then we'll do top 5. I don't think 1 and 2 will come as to anyone's surprise.
No.
Caleb Williams and Patrick Mahomes, number 1 and 2. No, I'm kidding. I had for 6 through 10, I had C.J. Stroud as number 6. I had Dak at 7, Justin Herbert at 8, Caleb Williams at 9, Jared Goff at 10.
Caleb at 9? Holy
Caleb
shit.
At 9. And I'm not fucking backing away from that.
No, don't. You shouldn't.
One bit. Because, again, kind of like what I was talking about with Anthony Richardson, I guess I really did take ceiling into account with a lot of these guys, especially C.J. Stroud up there at number 6. Granted, he did have a phenomenal rookie season, like one of the best rookie seasons of all time. I think Caleb can do that and more. Realistically, I think Caleb can absolutely do that and more. Going into this rookie season, he's in. I really don't think that there's a rookie quarterback who's had a better just scenario to walk right into a more complete team. You could argue maybe Peyton Manning with some of the weapons that he had in his rookie season, but they obviously didn't have a defense anywhere close to what Caleb Williams should have going into this year. I just. Like the more you watch the highlights of Caleb Williams and the more you learn about him and hear, people talking about him and just seeing the fear in other fan bases' eyes, talking about, oh, he got benched after 7 interceptions. No
So
source
stupid.
attached.
So
nothing.
stupid.
Like, just get out of here with that nonsense. And I know there's probably a little bit of a Bears homer to him being number 9, but you know, this is a Bears fucking podcast. I'm not backing down. Caleb Williams, top 10, easily gonna finish above that, no doubt about it.
He could. So 6 through 10 for me. CJ Stroud is 6. We're in lockstep there. Brock Purdy's is 7 for me. 8, which was this one was a tough. 8 was Jalen Hurts for me. I wanted to rank him lower. I truly did, but then I felt like I was going to be hating. 9 is Tua. 10 is Aaron Rodgers. This portion of the list, I think, is extremely divisive. I had a tough time putting it together because I feel like there's someone out there who probably has Tua ranked like 19, and I think that's way too low. But then I think someone probably has him like closer to 5, which I think is way too high. You know what I mean? Like he's sort of that middle ground for me. Aaron is getting older. He could find his way completely off the list if he just retires or whatever. So, but he's still physically talented as all hell. His track record is his track record. Would it shock me if he goes out there and puts up 4,200 yards, leads the Jets, to 12 wins, 11 wins? It wouldn't, because he's one of the greatest of all time. But I agree with you with CJ Stroud. I don't even feel the need to keep going. Phenomenal. He's earned it. I really wanted to make him number 5 over Justin Herbert to be. But I was like, let me not get too far ahead of myself. So let's talk Brock Purdy, because he's the one that we sort of brought up a few times. Obviously, you sort of knocked him for it. The reason why I had to look in the mirror is because, again, would other quarterbacks probably benefit from being in that same exact situation? 100%, absolutely. But you look at the things that he does so well, and it could just be, a perfect combination, or it's the exact quarterback that Kyle needs in his system to make that thing work. But he throws the ball on time so well. His blitz pickup is so good. His ability to anticipate throws. I mean, even you're talking about his rookie year as being Mr. Irrelevant. Like he was doing some of this, and you're like, this guy's well beyond. Now, what holds him back from people thinking that is where he was drafted, but 2, he didn't have the most physically talented arm. So it's more of like a Jeff Garcia type of flow to it, but on steroids, because this offense is incredible. So again, it was hard for me to knock him because he doesn't choose what situation he's in. Do I think he's doing this if he's on the Panthers? No, absolutely not. He's probably out of the league or on a practice squad somewhere. But again, I also don't know if Bryce Young goes into that situation or Drake May goes into that situation and they're just immediately, I rank him number 7, just right along with Brock Purdy. Like, he does do things on a football field that warrants him being ranked very high to me. Now, again, it's not going to be this year because he has the same exact weapons. It's the same shebang. When he gets paid, and he gets paid that $50 million or whatever it's going to be, and they have to totally restructure that offense or take completely away from the defense, whichever one route they decide to go, that's when he can get knocked down pretty far or stay there or potentially go higher. Like you brought up Brady earlier. We may be witnessing that again, because I know we look at Brady as the GOAT and he won all these rings and all that is true and fair, but they were having these conversations about him early on. Oh, the defense is really winning the rings, and he's winning by a field goal, and early on they were. No, but again, this is the sort of sprouting of a young quarterback. This is how you win with young quarterbacks in the NFL. They don't take over games very often. I mean, again, the reason why we were so high on Caleb is because the guys who did it, but before CJ Stroud, of course, he was awesome last year, but were Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. That doesn't happen often, dude. Like, even the generational Trevor Lawrence has not been able to get this done yet. Like, you win by placing a really good team around them and letting them develop and let them make mistakes, but the team is so good around them that it doesn't detract from you winning ball games on a consistent basis. Like, so Purdy is on that, he's there. He's on that trajectory. I'm not saying the GOAT, but just that sort of young development, but still being able to win. So I don't anticipate him being very much lower or higher on my list after this year. I can't imagine him doing anything in that offense. It's like, man, he's over CJ Stroud or Justin Herbert or any of those dudes. But I also, again, I feel like his floor is so high in that offense that this is probably where he'll be for another year or two.
Yeah, I'm not mad with people who put Purdy up there. I do think a lot of that arm strength debate is obviously the number one thing that knocks him down. Like, is he someone who can take over a game and really win it for you? I don't know if he'll ever be quite that. I don't know if he'll ever have the arm talent that Brady has. Definitely has the smarts. It's a good situation for him to be in, but I think there is going to be something to when you do pay him. Like, what does that look like? Like,
yeah, I mean, but then it's like that argument.
A tough one.
I agree, but then the thing is granted they haven't been good quarterbacks, but we have seen other quarterbacks in this system, and he's vastly outperforming them. Like Nick Mullins was okay, like these other dudes were okay.
It's more than the system. It for him, I should make that absolutely clear that I absolutely think he is more than what this system truly is, because of exactly what you're talking about. Other guys. They're not paying Nick Mullins for a reason. He's not still on the team. CJ Beathard isn't still there.
Right.
You know, like they Trey Lance. Trey Lance didn't work. Trey Lance is on a fucking other team.
I know. And they gave up a ton to get Trey Lance. Let's make no mistake.
It would have cost this regime's jobs if they did not luck out in getting Brock Purdy.
Yep.
Like John Lynch would be gone. Let's make no fucking mistake.
Yep.
Which is just so weird because Trey Lance never really even got a chance. He still hasn't really even gotten it. But I think that kind of says it all. That,
exactly. Yeah.
You know.
Exactly.
That Purdy was able to do that. So I agree. He's a good player. I look at the guys ahead of him that I put, and I'm like, if I was starting a franchise, starting from scratch, right, and I had the 7th pick, whatever franchise I am, I have the 7th overall pick. Am I taking Brock Purdy over some of these other dudes? Probably not.
Does Kyle Shanahan come with them?
No.
Then no.
No, you get the worst coach in the league, so you get Robert Saleh.
No. Fuck no.
You get who I can't even think of any bad coaches.
They're out there, baby.
Antonio Pierce. You want Antonio Pierce? You want Brock Purdy with Antonio Pierce?
No,
is that what you want?
Not. No,
absolutely.
I mean, but the thing is though, with the contract stuff with him, the Niners, I don't even know if they're really in that tough of a situation with it. They're going to pay him because what is the alternative? You're going to find these other you're too good. You're too good of a team though. So you're going to be looking for another Brock Purdy. I guess the contract would be better, but it's not going to be guaranteed that you're going to find another Brock Purdy. This is perfect for you.
Right. Well, I'm curious about because I know you said that he's your number 5. I had Justin Herbert at number 8.
Yep.
See, I was thinking I was putting our good friend Justin a little too high, if I'm being honest with you. I just kind of where I've seen people talking about him, and to be completely fair to those people, he hasn't really done anything. Like, he hasn't really won a lot. He wasn't really what let me take a look at something real quick. I'm just gonna read you something, and give me a second to pull this up here. I mean, Frankie, he hasn't thrown 30 touchdowns in 2 seasons here. All right, he's coming off. Granted, he didn't play that many games. Still doesn't turn the ball over a ton.
Yep.
Doesn't run very well compared to Trevor Lawrence even, which I feel like Trevor Lawrence doesn't get enough appreciation for how well he does run. I don't know, man. Like, I think Herb might be a little overrated these days. Ooh, and you have him in your top 5. I'm curious because now, granted, if this is what to me makes these conversations so interesting, because you can go about it a million different ways.
Yep.
Age, the status of the team that surrounds them. You can talk about arm talent. You can talk about the mind part of it, the rushing ability. Like, there's just so many different things that make these guys interesting and unique. Whereas like Herbert, like from a pure arm talent perspective, I can absolutely get behind you and say he's a top 5 guy. But when you put all of what he's done together, I just don't know how you justify him being a top 5 quarterback, or even, like I said, I thought 8 might be a little generous, but I agree with you that he is still a very good quarterback.
Yep.
But again, you kind of bring in all those things together. Is he really a top 5 QB?
This feels like a very similar conversation that's being had about Anthony Edwards all of a sudden. Of like, he's not the next Mike C. You guys are stupid. I think Justin Herbert is a victim of his very early success, and you may have the same thoughts in year 3 come with CJ Stroud, because we haven't had a chance to see him fail. We in a very similar manner, Justin Herbert comes in, tosses for 4,400 yards, 31 touchdowns, 10 picks, and he didn't even have. It was 2 games that he didn't start, and it was like, holy shit, this guy is way better than anyone thought. He was
assassinate Tyrod Taylor to get a chance to throw those 38 touchdowns.
But my point being, I think we still have to take into account that what he's doing at only 4 years in the league is fucking insane. Forget the stats, just the eye test and the throws he's able to make. I agree, athleticism, maybe there's a little bit more to be had, but his ability to manipulate the pocket, move within the pocket, diagnose blitzes, all of that is there. I think the one place where he's maybe a tad bit inconsistent is his anticipatory throws, but I think he makes up for it with the faith in his arm and letting his guys get a chance to go, make a play on 50-50 balls. That to me is sort of a nice balance that he has. I mean, it's the fucking Chargers, dude. That's a big part of it as well. So I get what you're saying. You're equating the lack of success a little bit more on him, which is always going to be a thing. He's the quarterback. I totally get it. But at the end of the day, it's the Chargers, man. Like they hung on to Brandon Staley way too long. Like this was a chance for them to go out and get an offensive mind as early as you could for Justin Herbert and continue to set him up for success. But it's like it's not like you could blame the offense. He was balling with the weapons that he had. Like that defense has been bad for quite some time, and all they do is keep getting old big name contracts on there to make it worse. Like they haven't, it's an interesting situation to a point where it would not shock me if he's no longer on the Chargers after another year or two.
Wow. Yeah. I here's the thing with Justin Herbert. I think the Chargers probably should have really considered trading him, to be honest with you, in this offseason for probably draft capital, because they probably could have got obviously a haul. And then taken like JJ McCarthy or whoever Jim Harbaugh wanted, because here's the thing with this offense, Frankie, you got Greg Roman coming in. Justin Herbert ain't throwing 38 touchdowns in this offense. He's throwing, he averaged just about, he threw 700 attempts in 2022. That's a lot. It's a lot of throwing the football. He's not going to be throwing the football that much in this offense. And I think that a lot of it, you kind of have to accept that only because of how they attacked the draft. They didn't use the number 5 pick to get a wide receiver. They didn't take Malik Neighbors when they had a chance. They didn't draft Rome Odunze. They sort of, decided to go with who they have, Quentin Johnston, and they signed Brendan Rice, who I actually wanted for the Bears. I'm taking a look right now at Lamar Jackson's totals at attempts over the last couple of years when he had Greg Roman. I mean, he only broke 400 once with Greg Roman as his OC. So it's going to be a change in philosophy. He's going to need to be more efficient. And I think that's kind of where Herbert's biggest weakness currently sits, is he's just not very efficient. And I think that goes a lot to what you were saying about him just needing to be better with the anticipatory stuff. Like he's not going to get as many opportunities to correct mistakes that he makes. So that's going to be, I think, where we see a really big shift in him and his skill set. And to be completely honest with you, Frank, I absolutely hate this pairing for Justin Herbert and his OC and Jim Harbaugh. Like, it's going to be a lot of running the football. They don't have a lot of proven guys running the football. It's J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and Kamani Vidal. Like, it's going to be those 3 dudes. Like, it's not like they have a workhorse back anymore, like with Austin Eckler. So not only, this is kind of where I talk situation, like Herbert's situation is not great, in my opinion. Though the weapons he has are not very good. The staff I don't love. I just don't think it's going to be a good mix, to be completely honest, because when things were working with Harbaugh's offense, you had Alex Smith, and that got them to a certain extent. And obviously Justin Herbert is a much more talented quarterback than Alex Smith. But that 49ers thing really took off when they had Colin Kaepernick and able to move the ball and with his legs. And we just talked about Justin Herbert not really being able to do that. And also a little bit of an injury history with Justin Herbert. Is he going to be able to stay healthy enough? So it's tough. It's a tough conversation. I just didn't feel good about having him in my top 5, unless you're talking pure quarterback talent. Then, yeah, you could make that argument. But I'm going to stick with him at number 8.
Hey, I don't hate it. It's just one of those things where I do think the expectations soared after his rookie year, and he fucking topped it with the 5,000-yard season the year after that. Like, this dude can ball.
Right.
To your point though, I'm curious to see what the offense looks like because he's really good outside of the pocket. He can throw on the run. He can make every single throw from every single arm angle. Like, he just talent wise, again, what we're talking about, he would be in the top 5 for me as well. I mean, Pat would still be number 1 on any list, however you want to slice it. Herbert, maybe just in terms of physical talent, he'd probably be 2 or 3. Like, he's so physically talented, it's crazy. Nas would have Matt Stafford at number 1, of course. But Herbert is in the conversation in terms,
dude.
yeah,
best throw of the football.
In terms of talent.
That's what he said about Matt Stafford, best throw of the football.
Are we going 1 through 5 here, Jackie?
We should probably just go 3 through 5 to be completely honest with you, Frank. 1 and 2, Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen.
Correct.
I know that you can't do the flipping order thing like that. I know it's a very common thing. Pat Mahomes, number 1 until he retires. He'll be number 1. I don't care what age does to this man. It doesn't matter. 3 through 5. Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts. And to be honest, Jalen Hurts was I kind of wanted to leave him out of my top 5, but it got to the point where I'm like, I got to put somebody in the 5 spot. And I went with the guy who he didn't have the best year last year, but it was still a pretty solid season comparatively to some of these other dudes. Lamar is Lamar, another MVP. Like, the dude's a stud. Let's not get it twisted. But that being said, there were conversations only a couple years ago of Joe Burrow possibly being number 1. Like, him possibly. Is he actually better than Pat Mahomes? Answer is obviously no. But I think there is still a runway for an argument if he's better than Josh Allen. Like, I don't think it's as clear cut as I just made it sound. That being said, Joey B, you got to stay healthy, my friend.
Yeah.
And then we can have those conversations. You got to win a couple playoff games. Again, I'm not saying you obviously never have. You've been to a Super Bowl. Josh Allen can't say that. But Josh Allen, I think, just ran, what he run for? Like 17 touchdowns?
Something
50.
stupid.
He had 50 touchdown runs, and he stayed healthy the entire season.
Yep.
Whereas,
he's built like a defensive end, though. I mean, he's
saying.
Cam Newton size.
Joey B, we got to stay healthy. We got to stay healthy, and the sky's the limit with that, because I still think he's one of the most talented quarterbacks. Now, Lamar, the problem with Lamar, I'm going to make it quick, and then you can share yours. I have Lamar at 4, and it's not a knock against him. I just think, like, we may have seen his peak. Like, this may be his peak, which is still really fucking good peak. I would take that. I would take this peak if I were a Bears fan and he was Bears quarterback. I'd be like, hell yeah. I just don't know what else there is to see from Lamar. Like, are we gonna see him get that much better? Like, especially when it comes to playoff time? Because at the top of the rankings, I'm thinking playoffs. I'm thinking Super Bowls. I'm thinking deep playoff runs. And obviously these 5 guys have all been able to, well, I guess maybe not Josh Allen as much, but these guys have won in the playoffs. And for Lamar, you get to that playoff time and you see a completely different quarterback. So I don't know, man. I just don't know what. Is there another gear for Lamar to hit? I guess is my question.
Yeah, and you know what? There may not be. Let me give you my 3. 3 is Lamar Jackson for me. 4 is Joe Burrow. 5 is Justin Herbert. We talked Justin Herbert. But I almost feel the same way about Brock Purdy in the sense of answering that question. Maybe there isn't, but that's okay. Like, you can win with the top 4, top 3 quarterback in this league. It's about maximizing, what he can do. I think the one thing that could propel him higher than a Josh Allen, because this is what Josh Allen did to get to number 2. You talk about both of the running abilities. Lamar's a better runner. I don't think Josh is that far behind, especially given his size and what he can do in goal line situations, just because the physical gifts he has, how big he is, how strong he is, how tall he is. But Josh learned how to play more on time football than Lamar did. Lamar is fucking magic in that pocket and scrambling and doing things, and he's getting better with being anticipatory, with playing within the rhythm of an offense. But where things get rough in the playoffs is you sort of always go back to who you are, right? And it's, I hear this analogy in boxing all the time. When someone changes their trainer, and he used to be an inside fighter type of guy, but he lost his last couple of fights, and now we're changing him. We're making him an outside fighter. He's going to use his jab. But when the going gets tough and it's close and you're in a fight, you're going to go back to who you are. And you're right back to that inside fighting. And I think that way of Lamar as well. He's made these strides. I don't even want to say as a passer. I hate when people, because I distinguish, he's always been a good passer. His arm talent is fucking insane. He can make every throw. He throws the ball 90 yards in the air. He can make the throws. But in terms of everything else, his ability to read a defense, way through the roof now. Like he all the small in between the ears things has come so far with Lamar. Phenomenal at just being a quarterback now. But when the going gets tough in the playoffs, he sort of reverts back to holding the ball a very long time, wanting to scramble, needing to see people wide open before he makes the throw. And if he can be more consistent, especially come playoff time, I think that's what would propel him. But I say that and say, like, to what? Like, you speak of the greatness of Patrick Mahomes. I don't know if anyone on this list. I mean, because you're at that point, you're talking about legacy. Like, you're talking about needing a ring or two. So even someone as talented as Caleb Williams, let's say he does better than CJ Stroud this year, we get to the first round of the playoffs, or we win a playoff game, it's like, great. That's not going to be enough to be higher than Pat. Like, same thing with Josh Allen. Like, for as phenomenal as he is to watch, for as great, like, and at this point, I'm not knocking them down. I'm just speaking to the greatness of Patrick Mahomes. Like, so I guess it's a long-winded way of even saying, like, what can he propel to? He can. I think there's still areas for a lot of these guys to improve, even if it's a tedious, small critique that, we could have of them. But no one's passing Pat. It's going to be a very long time before someone passes Pat, unless someone like Caleb or CJ continues to ascend. I don't see it, man.
I mean, yeah, it's crazy to me. Like, we got out of the Brady, Manning, Roethlisberger era to only come right back to it with with Pat, Joey B, Josh Allen, like Lamar, like thank God the Bears don't play in the AFC, because now we might actually have a chance to at least get to a Super Bowl. Yeah. I don't know if we'll be able to actually beat Patrick Mahomes in the next couple of years here, but
not with this cover 2 defense. We won't. He's gonna slice that shit up every time he.
Eberflus could be showing the door. Anyways, I do think ceiling wise, I think Caleb, like, in this top 10, I think Caleb and CJ Stroud probably have the best opportunities to at least get close to Pat. Whereas, like, Jalen Hurts, I think he's probably going to max out maybe around like Joe Burrow, kind of like a very good quarterback, but can he get you over the top? We'll see.
I think, listen,
in the NFC, it doesn't hurt.
I agree with your statement. When you're talking about ceilings, I think the only guys in the NFL, young guys, I'm not talking like Josh Allen is on that level. I get it. I'm just saying, like, the youngest dudes in this league, CJ Stroud and Caleb Williams, have a ceiling to get near Pat if they're maximized correctly, if they're developed correctly. I look at Jalen Hurts. He's trending towards Dak Prescott territory for me, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
It's
which,
like,
again, isn't bad. It's not bad. But are you going to be able to win with that? Win consistently? That's the biggest question. And that was kind of a lot of the question I asked myself a lot when I was doing this list, is like, can you win with this?
Right.
Consistently. Because you can maybe have a one good year, like Jalen Hurts made it to a Super Bowl. That's phenomenal. He had an incredible season. But now you have these question marks coming up, especially at the end of last year. How's he going to rebound this year? What's that going to look like? Is it going to probably look more like Dak Prescott than anything, where, like, he puts up crazy numbers? He has these crazy stretches where you're just like, man, like, this dude's so good. And then they kind of just revert back to who they are, like you were just talking about.
But it's also the other thing that's, like, if you just took legs completely out of it, Dak Prescott is a much better thrower of the football, diagnoser of defenses, anticipatory throw. Like, Jalen, it gets propelled because he's such a good athlete. Like, his legs, not even just talking about the tush push. You watch him play, he makes plays with his legs that are, it's very, like, if Justin Fields wasn't in the league the last few years, I think people would be talking about Jalen the way that they did about Justin, with the electrifying legs that he has. I don't know. I mean, it's almost like an extrapolated version of what I talked about with Jordan Love, because a couple years ago, Jalen was like, holy fuck, like, this guy just came out of nowhere. Here's his breakout year. And then last year, it kind of regressed back to the means a little. And you're like, all right, well, which one are you? Are you closer to the guy that made it to the Super Bowl, or were you the guy last year who was very inconsistent? So this is going to be a year for him that I can see me dropping him out of the top 10 depending on what's going on, because I'm also anticipating guys pushing up. I think Trevor's going to have a really good year. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be, maybe do we end there? Just a couple of predictions. I think Caleb's already in your top 10. I can see Caleb in there. CJ's going nowhere. I think CJ is the truth. As a matter of fact, I'm looking for any excuse to put him over Justin Herbert, to be quite honest with you. And I think Caleb has a real shot to do it. Even, again, dude, like, if I'm just doing complete comparisons, Tua may be out of my top 10. He's number 9 right now. Jalen Hurts as well. And again, I mean, Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers may retire. Who knows? Like, Jordan Love may be at the back half of my top 10 next year, because I do think he has a lot of talent. He puts together another full year of what he did at the second half of the year. For me, would be undeniable to have him there. Like, there could be a ton of movement on my list going into next year.
That's kind of why I smiled when you mentioned that. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I expect this list to look completely different. Maybe not as much in the top 8 or whatever, but all over the place. Like, there's young guys coming up. There's older guys who are probably going to start to decline if they haven't already. Aaron Rodgers, we'll see what he looks like if he's able to stay healthy. We'll see what Kirk Cousins looks like. Like, a lot of these guys can move down. Some of these guys may be done getting starting opportunities. Like, obviously, I don't expect Gardner Minshew to be the starter next year for Las Vegas. We might be talking about where we're ranking Shedeur Sanders or, Carson Beck or whoever it might be. Sam, maybe JJ McCarthy surprises us, or maybe he's exactly the quarterback that you and I think he will be. Maybe Bo Nix goes up. Like, there will be movement, because this is such an interesting time for the NFL quarterback position. There's so many, I feel like, guys just kind of in the middle somewhere. And like, the fact that I have Jared Goff in my top 10, I don't like that. I don't want Jared Goff to be a top 10 quarterback on my list, because I don't think he is a top 10 quarterback. But when you look at the overall list, I fully expect Trevor Lawrence to be above Jared Goff this time next year. Like, that should happen. But I've been saying that about Trevor Lawrence the last 2 years, and it hasn't happened yet. So, and like, Justin Fields should be back on this list. I just, the fact that Justin isn't on this list and we didn't talk about him at all today, it bums me out, because he's so much fun to watch. Like, we've just seen the last couple of years, he was the only source of joy in our life when it came to being a Bears fan. And the fact that he's not even on the top 32 quarterback list that you and I just talked about, it's disappointing and it sucks. And I want to talk about him more. Hopefully we'll talk about him next year.
Yeah. Well, that was why it was funny. I don't know if you listened to the last episode when it was just me and Nas, but I because again, y'all, to the listeners, we're going to do a 2015 comparison to this Bears team, or 2015 Cubs team to this Bears team, because I do think there's a lot of similarities. And I just sort of floated, like, is Justin Fields the Starlin Castro of this team? And I think that's another direct comparison as well, because there was years where he was the only guy worth watching on the Cubs, 2012, 2013, when we just fucking sucked. And, like, here's, like, Junior Lake getting brought up. And, like, so-and-so, like, could that be a thing? But Starlin hit 300, had 200 hits. Like, he just, like, was steady Eddie. And then we finally let him go. And it's like, damn, now it's our time to win. And, like, our boy who's, like, was the only reason to watch damn near is gone. So yeah, I agree with you, but I also the only reason I didn't want to make this a Justin episode, because we could have gone on about it.
Oh no, yeah.
Can I just end and say I have Russell at 21. I think Fields is winning in camp. I think he's going to win the job in camp, and he would be in that range anyway. Like, so it wouldn't, he'd be 21 to 23 in that range.
Justin would be above Jordan Love for me.
No, come on. Let's relax.
He'd certainly be above Matt Stafford. Okay, let's.
I don't know about that one, bub.
No, come on. Don't be a hater. Where would Justin be on your kick returner list? Number 1?
It's got to be.
What about running back list?
Top 6. 2. Top 6.
No, this is I love doing these rankings because there's just so many different ways to talk about it. And I've we've never really done it, Frank, but I feel like maybe like mid-season, like during the bye week.
Like
maybe during the bye week, we come back to this episode and we have our rankings and we're just like, where the fuck were we at on that?
That's a good idea. That's a really good idea.
Write that down. And we'll do that next time. well, not next time, but down the road on the Bear With Us podcast. I'm Jack. He's Frank. Hopefully Nas can join us next week, get a little more into shenanigans. We got a lot to talk about. NFL trio, wide receiver rankings, coaching rankings.
Coaching rankings, yep.
Yeah. I've had mine down for quite some time, and I know we'll have to get Nas to stop talking about Mike Vrabel for 2 seconds before we actually get into these rankings.
Well, then he'll just talk about Bill B. So.
Oh God, yeah, can't get him to stop on that either. Overrated bums. But thank you guys so much for watching, for listening, subscribing, liking, all that good stuff. We really do appreciate it. Any amount of time you spend listening to us chuckleheads talk about stuff that, we just like to talk about. So thank you guys so much. Frankie, I'll talk to you next week, man.
Later, Jackie. Later, everybody.